The story of humanity begins not with a shout of triumph, but with the quiet, terrifying rustle of dying leaves. 4,700,000 years ago, the Earth is a planet in the grip of a profound and invisible violence. It is the Pliocene epoch, a time when the global thermostat is ruthlessly turning down, draining the warmth from the oceans and locking moisture into the growing ice caps at the poles. In East Africa, the cradle of all that is to come, this planetary shift manifests as a slow, suffocating drought. The lush, unbroken canopy of tropical rainforests, which has swaddled the ancestors of mankind for millions of years, is beginning to tear apart. The green ocean of leaves, once infinite and eternal, is receding, revealing the harsh, golden scars of the encroaching savanna. For the creatures living within these ancient boughs, the world is a vertical paradise that is slowly turning into a prison. These are the early hominins, beings that exist in the twilight between the ape and something else, creatures like Ardipithecus, who have mastered the art of the canopy. For eons, their reality has been defined by the safety of the branch and the abundance of the fruit. They are acrobats of the high frontier, their long arms and grasping feet designed by evolution to navigate a three-dimensional lattice of vines and timber. Up here, 70 feet above the forest floor, they are the masters of their domain, protected from the terrestrial carnivores that prowl the shadows below. But the safety of the trees relies entirely on the density of the forest, and the forest is betraying them. The change does not happen in a single day, but over lifetimes, a slow strangulation of the habitat. The winds that sweep across the Great Rift Valley are no longer heavy with the humidity of the Indian Ocean. They are dry, thirsty gusts that suck the moisture from the vegetation. The great fig trees, which once dropped their sweet bounty year-round, now stand barren for months at a time, their leaves curling into brown, brittle scrolls. The hominins, driven by the primal ache of hunger, must travel further and further to find sustenance. The effortless swing from tree to tree becomes a calculated risk as the gaps in the canopy widen into terrifying chasms of empty air. The seamless roof of their world is fracturing, letting in shafts of blinding sunlight that bake the damp earth below and signal the end of an era. This is the winter of the apes, a silent catastrophe that demands a payment in blood for the privilege of survival. The biological machinery of these primates is perfectly tuned for a world that is disappearing. Their hips are flexible for climbing, their big toes diverge to grip the bark, and their brains are wired to map the complex geography of fruits and flowers. They are not built for the ground. To descend is to enter an alien dimension where they are slow, clumsy, and agonizingly vulnerable. Yet the logic of starvation is undeniable. As the fruit disappears from the upper branches, the smell of fallen, fermenting sustenance on the forest floor becomes a siren song, luring them down into the domain of the predators. Below the thinning canopy, the shadows are lengthening, concealing distinct threats that have evolved solely to kill. The ancestors of modern leopards and saber-toothed cats patrol the forest edge, sensing the desperation of the tree dwellers. They wait with the infinite patience of the apex predator, watching the trembling branches, knowing that sooner or later, gravity or hunger will do their work for them. For the hominins, the ground is a place of death. It is a two-dimensional plane where their climbing prowess is useless, where their vision is obscured by the undergrowth, and where they possess neither the fangs to fight nor the speed to flee. Every descent to retrieve a fallen fruit is a gamble with mortality, a heart-pounding raid into enemy territory. In this era of scarcity, the social fabric of the troop begins to fray under the pressure of competition. The easy camaraderie of the time of plenty is replaced by a tense, jealous guarding of resources. When a tree is found bearing fruit, the bickering is immediate and violent shrieks echoing through the thinning leaves as strong males drive away the weak and the young. The mothers clutch their infants tighter, their eyes darting nervously between the aggressive males of their own kind and the yawning gaps in the trees. The collective memory of the species knows only the forest. They have no concept of a life without the embrace of wood and leaf. To lose the trees is not just to lose a home, it is to lose the very definition of what they are. The geological forces shaping the continent are indifferent to their plight. The tectonic plates beneath East Africa are tearing the land apart, raising mountains that block the rain and deepening the valleys that trap the heat. The landscape is transforming into a mosaic of woodland and grassland, a patchwork environment that confuses the ancient instincts of the primates. The sure-footed confidence of the arboreal specialist is replaced by hesitation. They stand on the precipice of the highest branches, looking out over a world that is turning yellow and brown, a vast, dry ocean of grass that stretches to the horizon. It is a terrifying vista, a void that promises nothing but exposure and exhaustion. One particular season brings the crisis to a breaking point, a year where the rains fail completely. The dry season stretches on moon after moon, turning the forest floor into a crunching carpet of dead vegetation. The streams that watered the grove are reduced to muddy trickles
From this
and
high
then to
vantage
cracked
point,
clay.
we look upon the
The troop
world
of
of early
hominins is
man.
emaciated, their ribs showing through their fur, their movements lethargic. The silence of the forest is heavy, broken only by the rasping of insects and the dry rustle of the wind. They have stripped their territory bare. The nearest patch of green is visible in the distance, an island of life, separated from them by a vast, treeless corridor of scrub and tall grass. To stay is to starve. To move is to risk annihilation. The decision is forced upon them not by leadership but by the violence of the atmosphere. As the heat builds to an intolerable crescendo, the sky turns a bruised purple, heavy with the weight of a trapped storm. This is not the nurturing rain of the past, but a violent convective explosion born of the heat. The wind begins to howl, tearing through the weakened canopy, snapping the dry branches like kindling. The ancient trees, their roots starved of water, groan under the assault. Thunder shakes the very marrow of the earth, a sonic bombardment that sends the primates into a panic. They cling to the swaying timber, their eyes wide with the terror of creatures who realize their fortress is collapsing. With a sound like a cracking whip, the great matriarch tree, the center of their sanctuary, gives way. It crashes down through the understory, taking the intricate highway of vines and neighboring branches with it. The network is severed. The troop is scattered, thrown to the forest floor, or forced to jump into the abrasive brush. The storm rages on, drenching them in freezing torrents of rain, turning the dust into slick mud. For the first time in their lives, they are not looking down at the world. They are in it. The storm strips away the last illusion of safety. They huddle together in the lee of the fallen giant, shivering, soaked, and utterly exposed to the smells of the wet earth. When the storm passes, the silence that follows is even more terrifying than the thunder. The air is clear, but the canopy is gone. The sun breaks through the clouds, illuminating the destruction. The path back up is broken. The trees that remain standing are isolated pillars disconnected from one another. The troop stands on the damp soil, their knuckles brushing the wet leaves, their posture hunched and awkward. They look at each other, seeing the fear reflected in the wide, white-rimmed eyes of their kin. The vertical world is closed to them. The only path forward is horizontal. The alpha male, a creature of scars and instinct, takes the first tentative step away from the ruin of the tree. He rises not to a full stance, but to a crouch, lifting his head above the ferns to scan the horizon. His biology fights him. His pelvis aches with the unnatural angle, his feet flatten painfully against the hard ground. But he sees the distant grove, the promise of food shining green across the expanse of the savannah. He grunts, a low, guttural sound that signals movement. It is a command born of necessity. The others follow mothers hoisting babies onto their backs, the young ones whimpering in confusion. They move out into the open, a ragged line of refugees in their own land. The sensation of the tall grass brushing against their faces is alien and alarming. Every rustle of the wind sounds like a stalking predator. They are slow, their gait a rolling, shambling limp that burns energy efficiently but offers no speed. They are the first of their kind to commit to the void, to leave the garden that has nurtured them since the dawn of their lineage. They are small, insignificant specks against the vastness of the African plain, walking away from the ruins of the past and into the blinding light of a hostile future. This moment marks the severing of the umbilical cord between man and nature. By stepping out of the trees, they have declared war on their own biology, forcing their bodies to adapt to a hostile geometry. The Garden of Eden has not been lost due to sin. It has withered due to indifference. The universe has cast them out, stripping them of their sanctuary and handing them a sentence of eternal struggle. As they trudge through the mud, leaving the first deep footprints in the geological record, they are no longer just apes. They are survivors of the apocalypse, refugees of the climate, marching towards a destiny that will require them to conquer the very earth that tries to kill them. The forest, once their entire universe, is now a receding dark line on the horizon behind them. Ahead lies the abyss of the savannah, a vast, sun-drenched anvil where the hammer of evolution beats down without mercy. The air here is different. It is not the humid, suspended breath of the trees, but a dry, searing gas that parches the throat with every inhalation. The sun, no longer filtered by a million leaves, strikes their dark fur with the weight of a physical blow. The temperature soars, turning the open plains into a furnace, where the shimmering heat waves distort the distance, making the safety of the far-off woodlands seem like a mirage. They have entered a world of relentless exposure, where there are no shadows to hide in and nowhere to flee but forward. The grass is the first great adversary of this new existence. It grows high, reaching the chests, and sometimes the chins of the traveling hominins, a golden ocean that blinds them to the world. In the trees, danger came from below. Here it can come from any direction, hidden behind a veil of swaying stalks. To walk on all fours as their ancestors did is to be blind, to submerge one's head in a sea of ignorance, where a predator could be 3 steps away and remain unseen. Fear, the great motivator of biological innovation, forces them upright. They rise onto their hind legs, not out of ambition, but out of a desperate need to see over the vegetation, to scan the waving tips of the grass for the movement of a leopard or the ears of a hyena. This bipedal stance is a torture rack for their anatomy. Their bodies are caught in a painful transition, a biological compromise between the climber they were and the walker they must become. Their spines, originally shaped like a simple arch to support hanging organs, are being forced into an unnatural sparse curve to balance the head atop the hips. The lower back screams with the strain of this new verticality, compressing discs and grinding vertebrae. The pelvis, once long and narrow for swinging, is slowly broadening and shortening over generations to support the suspended weight of the torso, but the adaptation is far from perfect. Every step is a jarring impact, sending shockwaves through knees that are not yet fully capable of locking, creating a gait that is a rolling, inefficient wobble rather than a stride. Below them, their feet are undergoing a brutal remodeling. The divergent big toe, which once acted as a thumb to grip branches with precision, is becoming a liability on the flat, hard earth. It snags on roots and stones, twisting painfully, forcing the foot to roll inward. Evolution is ruthlessly selecting for those with stiffer, more aligned toes, turning a grasping hand into a propulsive lever. The arch of the foot begins to rise, a shock absorber for the endless pounding of the migration. But for these individuals, the change is not a finished product. It is a daily agony of blisters and bruised bones. They leave a trail of chaotic prints in the dust, the signature of a species that is literally breaking its own bones to reinvent the way it moves through the world. As they trudge through the midday heat, another physiological revolution takes place silently beneath their skin. The thick fur that kept them warm in the cool forest nights is becoming a death trap under the equatorial sun. To survive the heat of the chase and the trek, they must shed their coats. The hair begins to thin, exposing patches of skin that darken rapidly to protect against the ultraviolet radiation. A new cooling system is coming online, the proliferation of sweat glands. Unlike the panting carnivores that must rest in the shade when the sun is at its zenith, these wet, naked apes can keep moving, shedding heat through the evaporation of moisture on their skin. It is their first superpower, the ability to endure when the rest of the world sleeps. Hunger is the constant rhythm of their march, a dull ache that never truly fades. The fruit-laden branches are gone, replaced by the austere menu of the plains. They become opportunistic scavengers, the beggars of the savannah. They learn to read the sky, watching for the circling vultures that mark the site of a kill. When they find a carcass stripped of its prime meat by lions, they rush in with frantic desperation. They use raw stones, not yet tools, but heavy objects found nearby, to smash open the long bones, licking out the nutrient-rich marrow that the specialized teeth of the cats could not reach. It is a meal of grease and grit, a stolen feast, taken under the threat of the returning predators, requiring them to eat fast and look over their shoulders constantly. When meat is scarce, they turn their eyes to the earth itself. The savannah hides its energy underground in the form of tubers, roots, and bulbs, plants that store water and sugar to survive the dry season. The hominins use simple digging sticks, fallen branches stripped of leaves to pry these treasures from the hard-baked soil. It is grueling work that breaks fingernails and covers them in dust, but it unlocks a food source that no other primate can access. Their teeth, once sharp for piercing fruit skins, are grinding down the enamel, becoming thicker to crush the grit-covered roots. Their jaws grow powerful, massive chewing muscles anchoring to the skull, turning their faces into heavy crushing machines designed to process the toughest fibers the land has to offer. The social dynamic of the troop shifts under the weight of this exposure. In the trees, an alarm call sent the group scattering upwards into the canopy, each individual finding their own route to safety. On the ground, scattering is a death sentence. To survive, they must coalesce. They move in a tight phalanx, the adults forming a protective ring around the vulnerable infants. The chaotic squabbling of the forest gives way to a tense, disciplined cooperation. They are not united by love, but by the terrifying geometry of the open plain. A lone individual is simply a visible target, while a group is a confusing, shifting mass that might deter a predator for just a second long enough to survive. As the sun begins to dip, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and blood red, the thirst becomes unbearable. They have walked for days, licking dew from the grass in the mornings, but their bodies demand more. The instinctual map in the alpha's brain, a combination of memory and smell, leads them toward a low-lying depression in the landscape. The scent of mud and stagnant water drifts on the cooling breeze, triggering a rush of adrenaline. But water is where the world converges. It is the neutral ground where the truce of the wild is tested and where the killers lie in wait. To drink is to enter the most dangerous arena on the planet. They crest a small ridge and freeze. Below them lies a shrinking waterhole, a muddy mirror reflecting the twilight. But they are not alone. The banks are crowded with the titans of the Pliocene, a herd of Dinotherium, colossal relatives of the elephant, with tusks curving downward from their chins, dominates the shoreline, their massive grey bulk creating a wall of flesh. Giant horned buffalo and prehistoric horses jostle for position, their hooves churning the mud. The air is thick with the smell of dung, wet fur, and the musk of large animals. The hominins are dwarfed by these behemoths, appearing as insignificant as rodents in a land of giants. They crouch in the grass, their hearts hammering against their ribs, waiting for a gap in the wall of monsters. The thirst overrides the fear. The alpha signals, and they creep forward, bellies low to the ground, trying to make themselves invisible. They slip between the legs of the megafauna, dodging the stomp of hooves that could crush a skull like an eggshell. The tension is palpable. A sudden movement from a startled antelope could trigger a stampede that would obliterate the entire troop. They reach the water's edge, where the mud is churned into a thick slurry. Here they must perform the most dangerous action of all. They must stop, bow their heads, and lose their vision. To drink, they must take their eyes off the horizon, exposing the backs of their necks to the leopards that love to hunt in the chaotic twilight at the water's edge. They drink rapidly, lapping up the brown, silt-heavy water with frantic urgency. Every swallow is a calculation of risk. Their ears swivel, trying to filter the splashing of the hippos and the trumpeting of the Dinotherium to catch the stealthy footfall of a cat. The water is cool, life-affirming, washing away the dust of the migration, but it tastes of fear. Beside them, a massive crocodile slides off a mud bank into the water with a splash that sends the hominins scrambling back in terror. They do not linger. Hydration is a momentary theft, not a leisure activity. With bellies full of water, they retreat backward, never turning their backs on the waterhole until they can disappear once again into the obscuring embrace of the tall grass. Night falls rapidly on the savannah, bringing with it a sudden bone-chilling drop in temperature. The heat of the day evaporates into the clear sky, leaving the hominins shivering. They have survived the descent, the march, and the waterhole, but the abyss has one more challenge. They are ground dwellers now, with no high branches to construct sleeping nests. They are forced to huddle in a depression in the earth, a shallow bowl of dirt that offers zero protection against the prowling horrors of the night. As the stars ignite overhead, a billion cold, indifferent eyes, the troop clumps together into a singular pile of fur and limbs, a biological heating unit breathing in unison. They lie in the darkness, listening to the coughing roar of a saber-toothed cat echoing across the plains, a sound that vibrates in their chests. They are the intruders here, soft-skinned refugees, in a land of armor and fangs. The descent is complete. They have left the garden and walked through the furnace. They are alive, but they are incredibly fragile. The realization settles upon them with the heavy dew of the night. This is their life now. There is no going back up. The only way to survive the night is to cling to one another, to let the warmth of the group stand as the only barrier against the freezing void of the prehistoric dark. The sun rises over the East African rift, bleaching the sky white and banishing the protective cloak of darkness. For the huddled troop of hominins, the dawn does not bring relief but visibility, a double-edged sword that reveals both the path ahead and the monsters that guard it. The landscape that stretches before them is a vast golden coliseum, an arena without walls, where the only law is caloric efficiency. Here, the hierarchy of life is written in muscle mass and jaw strength, and by every physical metric, the hominins belong at the bottom. They are slow, lacking the explosive acceleration of the antelope. They are soft, their skin easily torn by thorns or talons, and they are weaponless, possessing neither the ripping fangs of the cat nor the crushing hooves of the buffalo. Dominating this open terrain are the true lords of the Pliocene, the specialized killing machines that evolution has spent millions of years perfecting. The most terrifying among them is the Dinophelis, a cat the size of a modern jaguar, but built with the heavy, robust skeleton of a bear. It is a creature designed for ambush, its coat a mottled camouflage that renders it invisible in the dappled light of the tall grass. These predators do not roam aimlessly. They are calculating strategists that understand the geography of fear. They watch the hominins from the shadows of the acacia scrub their pale eyes, tracking the stumbling gait of the bipeds, assessing the weak, the young, and the injured with a cold mathematical detachment. To survive in a world of giants, the hominins must exploit the one weakness of their enemies, the sun. As the day progresses and the temperature climbs towards a blistering 40 degrees Celsius, the great cats must seek shade. Their biology, reliant on panting to cool down, overheats rapidly under the relentless equatorial glare. The hominins, however, possess a radical thermal advantage. Their naked, sweaty skin acts as a high-performance cooling system, allowing them to remain active when the rest of the savanna is paralyzed by heat. This is their window of opportunity, a narrow slice of time at high noon, when they can move through the enemy's territory while the guards are asleep. They move in the hottest part of the day, a shimmering mirage of dark figures trekking through the heat haze. The air is still and suffocating, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of their feet on the dry earth. They are scavenging, looking for the leftovers of the night's massacres. A spiraling column of vultures marks the spot, a wildebeest carcass abandoned by a pride of lions. The troop approaches with extreme caution, their heads swiveling constantly. This is a heist, a high-stakes theft, where the penalty for being caught is instant death. The carcass is a gruesome pie stripped of the best meat, but the bones are still rich with marrow, a calorie bomb that can sustain them for days. The alpha male signals the group to halt as they reach the kill site. The smell is overpowering, a cloying mixture of rotting flesh, stomach bile, and the metallic tang of dried blood. While the females and young stay back scanning the horizon, the males rush in. They use heavy river stones carried for miles to smash the thick femurs of the wildebeest. The sound of stone hitting bone echoes dangerously loud in the quiet afternoon. Cracking, splintering. They scoop out the fatty pink marrow with their fingers, eating frantically their eyes, never focusing on the food, but always darting toward the swaying grass that surrounds them. Every second spent at the carcass is a roll of the dice. Suddenly the grass explodes. The silence of the midday truce is shattered not by a roar but by a rush of air and the terrified shrieks of the sentries. A Dinophelis pushed by hunger to hunt even in the heat has been lying in wait mere meters away, utterly unseen. It launches itself with terrifying speed, a blurred missile of tawny fur and muscle. There is no time to run. The ambush is designed to be over before the prey can accelerate. The cat crashes into the flank of the troop, its weight alone enough to knock 3 adults to the ground. Dust billows up, blinding and choking, turning the organized formation into a chaotic swirl of panic. The target is not the alpha, but a lagging female slowed by the burden of a nursing infant. The predator's paws, armed with retractable claws, sharp as obsidian hook into her shoulder, dragging her down with horrifying ease. The scream she emits is primal, a sound that bypasses the intellect and strikes directly at the nervous system of every member of the troop. It is the sound of absolute terror. In the old world of the trees, the troop would have scattered, leaving the victim to her fate. But here on the ground, something else happens. A defensive reflex born of their new, desperate social contract. They do not flee immediately. They turn, the males, fueled by adrenaline and the ancient instinct to protect the reproductive future of the clan rally. They scream back a cacophony of hoots and barks, intended to confuse and intimidate. They pick up rocks and dirt, hurling them at the predator. This is the dawn of projectile warfare, the use of action at a distance. The stones bounce off the thick hide of the cat, causing little physical damage, but the psychological impact is immense. Predators are used to prey that runs, not prey that fights back. The cat paws his ears, flattened, hissing at the wall of noise and flying debris. For a heartbeat, the outcome hangs in the balance, a standoff between raw power and collective audacity. But nature is rarely sentimental. The gap in weight class is too vast to be bridged by courage alone. The Dinophelis recovers from its surprise, its predatory drive overriding the confusion. With a snarl that vibrates through the ground, it tightens its grip on the female's neck. The crushing bite is delivered with surgical precision, severing the windpipe and snapping the vertebrae. The resistance of the troop falters as the reality of death unfolds before them. The female's struggles cease. The baby, thrown clear in the initial impact, wails in the dust, a small, helpless sound that cuts through the chaos. The alpha male makes a split-second calculation. To stay is to die. The cat has made its kill. It will defend its prize with lethal ferocity. He barks a sharp, guttural command: retreat. One of the younger females scoops up the crying infant, clutching it to her chest as the group breaks formation. They scramble away, legs pumping, lungs burning, putting distance between themselves and the slaughter. They do not look back. To look back is to see the face of the nightmare that will haunt their sleep. They run until their muscles fail, until the adrenaline crash leaves them trembling in a patch of thorny scrub miles away. They collapse in the shade of a lone acacia, gasping for air, their bodies slick with sweat and dust. The group is smaller now. The absence of the female is a physical void in their arrangement. They sit in silence, the only sound, the high-pitched weeping of the orphan and the heavy, ragged breathing of the survivors. They are alive, but the cost of their survival is painted in the blood left behind on the savannah. They have stared into the eyes of a god of the food chain and seen no mercy there. They are not the masters of this world. They are trespassers allowed to exist only by the margins of luck and the speed of their retreat. Yet in this defeat, a crucial lesson is burned into their developing neural pathways. They survived the initial ambush because they stood their ground, however briefly. They bought seconds of time with their unity. The rock in the hand, the scream in the throat, the refusal to abandon the group instantly, these are the tools that might one day tip the scales. They are learning that while a single hominin is nothing but a snack for a leopard, a troop of hominins is a porcupine of noise and violence that can be difficult to swallow. The tragedy of the loss begins to forge a harder, more militant mindset. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows of the giants lengthen across the plains, turning every bush into a potential ambush. The troop remains huddled, hyper-vigilant. They watch a herd of elephants pass in the distance, majestic and invulnerable, and they feel the crushing weight of their own fragility. But they also feel something new, a simmering, impotent rage. It is this dissatisfaction with their place in the food chain that will eventually drive the relentless march of their evolution. They are tired of running. They are tired of being meat. And somewhere in the recesses of their expanding brains, the idea of a sharper rock, a longer stick, a hotter fire begins to germinate. The sun sets, painting the sky in the color of the blood they spilled today. The shadows of giants are not just physical threats. They are the pressure cooker that is forcing the hominins to become something more than animals. The weak are culled, leaving only the alert, the cooperative and the resilient to pass on their genes. Tonight they will sleep fitfully, starting at every snapping twig, but they will wake up smarter. The confrontation has stripped away their innocence. They are no longer just survivors. They are veterans of a war that has lasted since the beginning of time, a war they are determined against all odds to eventually win. The sun, the tyrannical master of the savannah, finally abdicates its throne, slipping below the jagged horizon of the Rift Valley. In its wake, it leaves a bruised purple sky that rapidly fades into an absolute suffocating black. For the hominins, the departure of the light is a moment of profound psychological transition. The day was a realm of searing heat and visual clarity, a battle for calories fought with eyes wide open. The night is a different kingdom entirely. It is the domain of the unseen, a world of auditory hallucinations and plunging temperatures. Without the thick fur of their primate cousins, or the blubber of the aquatic mammals, these naked apes are physiologically ill-equipped for the cold that now descends upon the plains. The temperature drops precipitously, stripping 20 degrees from the air in a matter of hours. The heat radiating from the baked earth dissipates into the clear, cloudless atmosphere, leaving the troops shivering in the vacuum. Here on the open ground, there are no cave walls to reflect heat, and no mastery of fire to push back the dark. The spark of this era is not a chemical combustion of wood and dry grass. It is a biological combustion of metabolic heat shared between bodies. Survival now dictates a surrender of personal space. The troop collapses inward, forming a dense, tangled pile of limbs and torsos in a shallow depression of the earth, a singular organism constructed of flesh and fear. This sleep pile is the architectural foundation of human society. It is a structure built of necessity, where the hierarchy of the day dissolves into the equality of the night. The alpha male, usually solitary in his dominance, lies back to back with the subordinates. The mothers curl around the infants, creating pockets of warmth, with their bodies acting as living shields against the chill wind. In this intimacy, the boundaries of the individual begin to blur. They can feel the heartbeat of their neighbor, the rhythm of another's breathing, the twitch of muscles dreaming of flight. They inhale the scent of their kin, sweat, dust, and milk, a chemical signature that brands them as us against the hostile them of the wilderness. Before sleep claims them, a ritual unfolds that is as essential to their survival as water. Fingers calloused from digging and climbing begin to move through the remaining patches of fur on their companions. Grooming is the primary technology of social bonding. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic picking and stroking that cleans the skin of parasites. But its true function is neurological. The sensation of touch triggers the release of endorphins and oxytocin in the brain, flooding their systems with a chemical calm that counteracts the cortisol of the day's trauma. In the terrified silence of the Pliocene night, this tactile reassurance is the only sedative they have. It is in these quiet, terrifying hours that the anatomy of communication begins to shift. With their mouths silent to avoid attracting predators, they learn to speak with their eyes. The mutation that whitens the sclera, the area surrounding the iris, begins to take hold in the population. Unlike the apes whose dark eyes conceal the direction of their gaze, the hominins develop eyes that broadcast intention. In the pale wash of moonlight, a mother can catch the gaze of a male, seeing the fear or the reassurance reflected there. It is the beginning of a theory of mind, the ability to understand that another being has thoughts and feelings separate from one's own, a cognitive leap that lays the groundwork for complex cooperation. The orphan rescued from the jaws of the Dinophelis during the day's slaughter whimpers in the center of the huddle. In a purely animalistic calculation, this child is a liability, a caloric drain that offers no immediate return, a noise beacon that invites death. But the logic of the troop is changing. A female who is not the biological mother shifts her position, pulling the shivering infant against her chest. She offers it warmth not out of instinctual drive for her own genetic line, but out of a burgeoning capacity for empathy. The group absorbs the loss and the burden, weaving the orphan into the collective fabric. This act of adoption is a rebellion against the ruthless math of natural selection. Food too becomes a currency of connection rather than just fuel. During the day, they manage to scavenge a few durable roots and a fragment of bone. In the safety of the huddle, a male who successfully pried a tuber from the hard earth does not devour it entirely. He snaps the fibrous root, passing a portion to a nursing female whose energy reserves are critically low. It is a clumsy, hesitant gesture born of the realization that her survival is linked to his. If she dies, the troop weakens. If the troop weakens, he dies. Selfishness is slowly being pruned away by the sheer difficulty of the environment, replaced by a pragmatic altruism. However, the night is not peaceful. It is a siege. The darkness is alive with the sounds of the mega-predators. The coughing, soaring sound of a leopard patrolling its territory drifts on the wind, causing the entire pile of hominins to stiffen in unison. They are encircled by creatures that see perfectly in the dark monsters that view them as slow, defenseless bags of protein. The hominins possess no claws, no armor, no night vision. Their only defense is their alertness and their number. Every snapping twig is analyzed by a dozen brains simultaneously. If one head lifts in alarm, they all wake. They are a distributed sensor network, a collective consciousness keeping watch over the void. Deep in the night, the temperature hits its nadir. The frost begins to form on the tips of the tall grass. An older male, injured in the scramble of the previous days, begins to shake violently, his body heat failing. He is on the periphery of the pile, exposed to the biting wind. In the old world, the cold would simply claim him a quiet culling of the weak. But tonight, the pile shifts. Without a sound, the bodies rearrange. The younger, stronger individuals on the interior move outward, and the shivering elder is pushed toward the center, the thermal core of the group. It is a fluid, unspoken rotation of suffering and relief. This behavior signifies a monumental departure from the animal kingdom. They are actively fighting entropy, using their collective mass to artificially extend the lifespan of their members. They are valuing the experience of the elder, the memory of where the water holes are, the knowledge of which berries are poisonous over his immediate physical utility. They are beginning to hoard information, and to do that they must preserve the vessels that hold it. The spark in the night is this realization that the death of one is a loss of data for all. They are becoming a library of survival strategies bound in flesh and blood. As the moon arcs across the sky, casting long, shifting shadows that look like stalking beasts, the troop drifts into a fitful REM sleep. In their dreams, they are likely still falling from trees or running from fangs, their brains processing the trauma of the terrestrial existence. But even in sleep, they maintain contact, a hand gripping an ankle, an arm thrown over a shoulder. They are physically tethered to one another. To let go is to drift into the freezing solitude of death. The darkness presses in vast and indifferent, but it cannot penetrate the tight-knit fortress of their bodies. The wind howls like a living thing tearing at the exposed skin of the sleepers, but they endure. They endure because they have discovered the secret weapon of their species. It is not the tool or the weapon or the fire, those will come later. The first weapon is the circle, the ability to turn inward, to prioritize the group over the self, to share the heat of life in a universe that seeks to freeze it out. They are generating a social gravity that is strong enough to hold them together against the centrifugal force of fear. The night seems to last for an eternity, a grueling marathon of shivering and waiting. Every hour survived is a victory against the odds. They lie there, a small mound of breathing dust in the middle of a killing field, waiting for the sun to return. They are the underdogs of the epoch, the creatures that should not have survived. But in the darkness, they have forged a bond that is stronger than bone and more durable than stone. They have invented love not as a romance but as a survival strategy. And it is this spark, invisible and intangible, that keeps the blood pumping through their veins until the grey light of dawn begins to bleed into the eastern sky. The sun rises on a morning that feels different from the thousands that have preceded it. The relentless, searing blue of the sky has been replaced by a heavy, bruising shade of grey. The air, usually dry enough to crack skin, is thick with a strange, heavy humidity that clings to the fur of the hominins. A low rumble rolls across the plains. But it is not the growl of a predator or the stampede of a herd. It is the voice of the atmosphere itself. For the first time in an epoch of drought, the clouds have gathered with intent. The wind shifts, carrying the metallic scent of ozone and the deep, rich perfume of wet earth. The Great Rift Valley, a cauldron of heat and dust, is about to be baptized. The first drops are heavy and cold, striking the dust like bullets exploding into small puffs of brown powder. Then the heavens open. The rain does not fall. It is driven into the earth in sheets of silver and grey. The troop of hominins stands in the deluge, stunned by the sensory overload. The water streams over their faces, washing away the accumulated grime of the dry season, matting their thinning hair to their skulls. They do not run for cover, for there is none, and the instinct to hide is overridden by the sheer biological relief of the moment. They open their mouths to the sky, drinking the falling water, feeling the cool liquid soothe their parched throats. The furnace has finally broken. In the days that follow, the miracle of the savannah unfolds with terrifying speed. The brown, dead world erupts into a violent shade of green. The dormant seeds of grasses and flowers, waiting in the soil for years, burst forth in a frenzy of growth. The dust turns to mud, and the mud turns to life. The herds of wildebeest and antelope return, their numbers swelling as the grazing becomes plentiful. The landscape is no longer a skeletal graveyard of bones and dry scrub. It is a lush, vibrant garden. but it is a garden that exists on the ground, not in the sky. The trees are still few and far between islands in a sea of grass. The hominins have survived the bottleneck, but the world they have inherited is irrevocably changed. They move across this wet, transformed landscape, leaving a trail that will become the defining signature of their existence. To the south, a nearby volcano rumbles, spewing a fine layer of grey ash that coats the wet plains like snow. The troop walks through this slurry of ash and rain. They are no longer the stumbling, hesitant refugees who left the forest. Their gait has settled into a rhythmic, efficient stride. The heel strikes the ground, first absorbing the shock. The weight rolls along the outer edge of the foot, and the big toe pushes off with decisive power. They are walking not just to move, but to travel. They are covering distances that their tree-dwelling ancestors could not have conceived their legs, acting as pendulums that swing with minimal energy cost. The footprints they leave behind in the cooling volcanic ash are profound in their detail. There are large prints, deep and heavy, belonging to the males who walk on the perimeter, their eyes scanning the horizon. Inside the formation are smaller prints, the lighter steps of the females. And weaving between them are the tiny, chaotic prints of the young. In one specific set of tracks, a smaller individual walks in the footsteps of a larger one, literally stepping into the impressions made by the elder. It is a physical manifestation of learning of one generation, guiding the next. The ash hardens as it dries, locking this moment in stone, a snapshot of a family walk that will outlast the mountains themselves. The young ones born during the time of the descent know no other world. They do not look up at the trees with the longing of the older generation. To them, the ground is not a place of exile. It is a playground. They chase each other through the tall grass, their bodies growing strong and lean. They practice the skills of the new world, throwing stones at lizards, digging for beetles, wrestling in the mud to establish dominance. Their play is the rehearsal for survival. They are the first true children of the savannah, their biology fully committed to the earth. The fear of falling has been replaced by the fear of being caught, and their games are tuned to the frequency of escape and evasion. The troop has not just survived the environment, they have begun to map it. The collective brain of the group now holds a complex database of the territory. They know that when the rains come, the herds move north. They know that the rock formations in the west hold water even in the dry season. They know the flight distance of a gazelle and the sleeping habits of the lion. This information is not written down. It is encoded in the neural pathways of the elders and transmitted through gesture, sound, and example. They are becoming the archivists of the ecosystem, processing data with a sophistication that no other animal possesses. The landscape is no longer a chaotic threat. It is a puzzle they are learning to solve. Physically, the cost of this transition is visible in their bodies.
After the rains,
they are scarred, lean, and weathered, but there is a new robustness to them. Their bones have thickened to withstand the gravity of the ground. Their hands, freed from the duty of walking, are becoming more dexterous, capable of manipulating objects with increasing precision. They pick up a sharp stone, not to shape it, yet that leap is still to come, but to use it. They use it to scrape meat from a bone, to crack a nut, to dig a hole. The hand is becoming the primary interface between the mind and the world. The tool is still crude, unchanged from nature, but the intent behind it is revolutionary. The predators, the dinophelis, the hyenas, the saber-toothed cats are still there, prowling the edges of the green flush. The war for survival has not ended, it has simply settled into a stalemate. The hominins are still prey, but they are difficult prey. They are alert, they are loud, and they are armed with rocks and the unshakable loyalty of the pack. The predators have learned that to attack the naked apes is to invite a storm of screaming violence. A balance has been struck. The hominins have carved out a niche for themselves in the middle of the food chain, a precarious ledge where they cling with tenacious grip. They are not the kings of the beasts, but they are the survivors of the gauntlet. As the sun begins to set on this era, casting long golden shadows across the vibrant plains, the meaning of their journey crystallizes. 4.7 million years ago, the universe asked a question of the primate lineage: adapt or die. Most stayed in the shrinking forests and faded into the obscuring mist of extinction. This specific line, this ragged band of outcasts, chose the impossible. They chose to stand up. They chose to walk into the fire. They endure the cold nights, the scorching days, and the terror of the shadows. They have paid for their survival with the loss of their sanctuary, trading the easy life of the canopy for the hard, grinding reality of the earth. But in doing so, they have gained the world. The forest was a cage, the savanna is a highway. By standing up, they have freed their hands. By freeing their hands, they have freed their potential. They are no longer limited to the geography of trees. They can go anywhere. They can cross deserts, climb mountains, and ford rivers. The horizon is no longer a boundary. It is an invitation. The hardship of the Pliocene has forged a creature that is defined by its resilience. A being that thrives not because the world is kind, but because it is stubborn enough to refuse to die. In the final light of the day, the alpha male climbs a small termite mound, rising a few feet above the swaying grass. He is silhouetted against the burning orange sun, a dark, solitary figure standing on two legs. He does not crouch. He does not hide. He looks out over the vast, teeming expanse of Africa. His eyes, framed by a heavy brow, are not filled with the panic of the refugee, but with the calm calculation of a resident. He watches the herds moving in the distance, he watches the clouds drifting north, and he watches the night approaching. He stands perfectly still, a sentinel of the new age. He turns his head, looking back at his troop. The females are grooming the young, the males are resting, the infants are sleeping in the safety of the group. They are small, vulnerable, and infinitely precious. He grunts a low sound of affirmation and looks back to the horizon. The footprint has been made. The path has been chosen. The winter of the apes is over. The spring of humanity has begun. They have done the impossible, they have stayed. And because they stayed, because they endured the unendurable, the future belongs to them. The sun sets, but the story does not end. It is only the first chapter of a much longer, greater epic that will one day cover the stars.
Hands freed from walking, becoming the primary tool of the mind. The choice to walk into the fire, abandoning the easy life of the canopy.
We head toward the setting sun.
It is far, but we must reach the water before dark.
We head toward the setting sun.
It is far, but we must reach the water before dark.
We head toward the setting sun.
It is far, but we must reach the water before dark.
The creature defined by resilience, thriving through stubbornness. sentinel of the new age, resident not refugee in a vast African plain at golden hour. Turning back to the horizon, the path chosen and footprint made.